The notification came through at 2:47 a.m., the exact moment when Maya Chen's phone battery hit 3% and her daughter's fever spiked to 103.2. She almost didn't open it. Almost let the email from Whitmore and Associates, estate attorneys, vanish into the digital void along with every other promise that had evaporated since her husband walked out 18 months ago. But Lily's small hand found hers in the dark, and Maya's thumb moved automatically, muscle memory from too many sleepless nights when distraction was the only medicine she could afford. Subject: urgent. Estate of Dr. Patricia Chen. Legal heir notification. Maya's vision blurred. She read the name 3 times before her exhausted brain processed what it meant. Patricia Chen, her mother, the woman who'd stopped returning calls 7 years ago after Maya married against her wishes. The scientist who'd chosen Arctic research stations over birthday parties, who'd sent postcards from Greenland instead of attending Lily's birth. The woman who, apparently, had died 4 months ago without anyone bothering to tell her only daughter. Maya's hands shook as she scrolled through the email's clinical language. Sole beneficiary, Antarctic Research Facility, expedited probate due to contested claims, immediate action required. Lily stirred, her small face flushed with fever that Maya couldn't afford to take to the emergency room because their insurance had lapsed 3 weeks ago when she'd chosen groceries over premiums. The thermometer on the bedside table read 103.2. Every thermometer in their studio apartment seemed to mock her lately. The broken oven gauge stuck at 450, the weather station Lily got for her 8th birthday that no longer worked. The meat thermometer Maya used to check if chicken was safe because food poisoning was a luxury they couldn't afford. Temperature. Her mother had devoted her entire life to measuring it. Ice cores spanning millennia, climate data that one award Maya only learned about through Google searches she'd done late at night when missing someone who'd never really been there. And now Patricia Chen had left her something. A research facility in Antarctica. Maya almost laughed. Almost. Because the absurdity of inheriting a building in the most inhospitable place on Earth while you're 3 months behind on rent in a Boston studio apartment that smells like mildew and broken dreams. That was the kind of cosmic joke that made you question whether God had a sense of humor or just malice. Mommy. Lily's voice came out scratchy, small. Is it morning? Not yet, baby. Try to sleep. I'm cold. Maya pulled their one decent blanket higher, tucking it around Lily's shoulders with the kind of precision she'd learned from making a single paycheck stretch across 4 weeks. Cold. Her daughter was burning with fever and shivering with chills, and somewhere in Antarctica, there was a building full of ice that technically belonged to them. The email included a phone number. Emergency contact for estate matters. Maya stared at it until the screen went dark, saving the last 2% of battery life. She should wait until morning. Should think this through. Should do what responsible adults do when faced with impossible situations. Instead, she plugged in her phone, the charger that only worked if you held it at exactly the right angle, and dialed. A man answered on the second ring, his voice crisp despite the hour. Whitmore and Associates. This is James Whitmore. You sent me an email about Patricia Chen's estate. Maya's voice came out steadier than she felt. I'm Maya Chen, her daughter. A pause. Ms. Chen, thank you for calling. I realize the hour is unusual, but the situation is time-sensitive. Your mother's facility in Antarctica is currently occupied by someone claiming superior right to the property. The words landed like punches. Of course, there was someone trying to steal whatever impossible thing her mother had left behind. Because nothing in Maya's life had been simple since the morning she woke up to find David's note and half their bank account gone. Who? A Dr. Marcus Fern. He's presenting documentation that suggests he was your mother's research partner and designated heir. He's been living in the facility since shortly after your mother's death and has begun liquidating equipment. Maya pressed her free hand against her forehead, feeling the beginning of a headache that would cost her the rest of the night's sleep. And what exactly did my mother leave me? Some research station in Antarctica isn't exactly something I can sell on Craigslist. The Thermopolis Research Station. It's a privately owned ice core storage and analysis facility located approximately 200 miles from McMurdo Station. Your mother purchased the land and built the facility with a substantial inheritance she received from her parents in 2005. The structure includes living quarters, laboratory equipment, and approximately 40,000 ice core samples representing 800,000 years of climate data. The number hit Maya like physics she couldn't process. 40,000 samples. 800,000 years. Her mother had been collecting frozen time, while Maya was failing to keep her own present from falling apart. The estimated value of the facility and its contents, assuming Dr. Verne hasn't sold anything irreplaceable, is approximately $8.4 million. The land itself, given its proximity to research routes and strategic location, could sell for another $3 million to the right buyer. Maya's apartment tilted. $11 million. She'd been rationing peanut butter and trying to figure out if she could sell her wedding ring, the one thing David hadn't managed to take, for enough money to cover next month's rent. And her mother had been sitting on $11 million worth of frozen water and scientific equipment. "Ms. Chen, are you still there? Why didn't she tell me?" The words came out before Maya could stop them, raw and accusatory in a way that made her feel like she was 12 years old again, waiting for her mother to show up to her school play. James Whitmore's sigh carried decades of experience with complicated families and complicated grief. "Your mother updated her, 6 months before her death. She specified that you were to inherit everything, along with a letter she left in my custody. Dr. Verne filed his claim 2 weeks after the funeral, before we could locate you. The Antarctic regulatory authorities won't intervene in property disputes. We need to establish legal ownership before Dr. Verne can liquidate more equipment." More equipment? He sold approximately $200,000 worth of specialized instruments to private collectors in the past month. Climate research tools, analysis equipment, items that took your mother years to acquire. At this rate, by the time we get through normal probate proceedings, there won't be anything left except the building and the ice. Maya looked at Lily, at the medical bills stacked on their makeshift desk, at the eviction notice she'd hidden under a library book so her daughter wouldn't see it, at the thermometer reading 103.2. What I need to do? Ideally, you'd fly to Antarctica, establish physical presence at the facility, and assert your rights as legal heir. But I understand that's not a simple request. The logistics alone. How much? Maya interrupted. How much would it cost to get there? Another pause. Commercial flights to Christchurch, New Zealand, then military transport to McMurdo, then private transport to your mother's facility, approximately $8,000 per person. The season is closing soon. After mid-March, the weather makes travel impossible until November. $8,000. Maya had $247 in her checking account, and $1,100 in savings she'd been desperately protecting like it was a life raft instead of what it actually was, a few more weeks of slowly drowning. "Ms. Chun, I should also mention that Dr. Verne has significant resources. He's retained Blackstone Legal, one of the most aggressive firms in international property disputes. They're preparing to argue that your mother's will was executed under duress, that she lacked mental capacity, and that Dr. Verne's decades-long partnership gives him superior claim regardless of documentation." Was she sick? Maya's voice cracked. At the end, "Well, my mother's sick. She had early-stage dementia. The diagnosis came 8 months before her death. Dr. Verne is using that to argue she wasn't competent to exclude him from her estate." Maya closed her eyes. Dementia. Her mother's brilliant mind, the one that had solved climate puzzles and built a career from nothing, slowly being eaten away while Maya was in Boston struggling to remember to pay the electric bill on time. The will update happened before the dementia progressed significantly. James continued. "We have medical records confirming her capacity, but legal battles take time and money. Dr. Verne knows that. He's betting you can't afford a fight." Lily coughed, a wet sound that made Maya's stomach clench. The fever wasn't breaking. She needed to take her daughter to the clinic in the morning, add another bill to the pile that already threatened to bury them. "There's one more thing," James said, and his tone shifted into something that sounded almost like excitement. "Your mother left you a letter. She specified it should only be opened by you, in person at my office. She said, and I'm quoting directly from her instructions, Maya will understand why she has to go to Thermopolis. The temperature readings will show her what matters. Temperature readings. Maya looked at the thermometer on the bedside table. 103.2. She looked at the broken oven gauge. 450. She looked at Lily's birthday weather station. It screened blank and useless. Tell me how to get there, Maya said. Tell me exactly what I need to do. The next morning came with Lily's fever breaking and Maya's determination hardening into something that felt dangerously close to hope. She called in sick to her job at the university library, a part-time position that paid $16 an hour and offered no benefits, but at least let her work around Lily's school schedule. Then she walked to the one place she'd been avoiding for 6 months. The pawn shop on Tremont Street smelled like desperation and broken promises. The man behind the counter looked up from his phone with the exhausted expression of someone who'd seen every type of lost parade through his door. Wedding ring, Maya said, placing it on the counter. 18-karat gold, half-carat diamond. I need cash today. He examined it with a lupe, his face betraying nothing. I can give you $800. It was worth at least $2,500. Maya knew it. He knew it. But she also knew that desperation had a price, and that price was whatever people thought they could get away with paying. Deal. She walked out with $800 bills and the feeling that she just sold the last piece of her old life to buy a ticket to something impossibly uncertain. But between the ring money and her savings, she had just under $2,000. Nowhere near enough for Antarctica. The answer came from an unexpected place. Mrs. Kowalski lived 2 doors down from Maya and Lily's studio. She was 73, Polish, and possessed the kind of blunt wisdom that came from surviving things that would break softer people. She'd been feeding Lily homemade pierogi secretly for months, as if Maya didn't know exactly why her daughter came home with full stomach and flour on her shirt every Tuesday evening. I have question, Mrs. Kowalski announced when Maya dropped Lily off that afternoon. You look like someone who need money fast. This is true. Maya almost lied. Pride made her want to say everything was fine, that she was managing, that she didn't need help from a woman who probably lived on Social Security and stubbornness. Yes, she said instead. I need money fast. Mrs. Kowalski nodded like this confirmed something she'd already known. Your mother was scientist, yes? In Antarctica? How did you? I Google. I see news. Dr. Patricia Chen, climate researcher, dies at station in Antarctica. I think this is Maya's mother. Because you have same last name, and you have same looking eyes, like you measuring something invisible that other people cannot see. Maya's throat tightened. She left me her research facility. But someone's trying to steal it. If I don't get there soon, there won't be anything left to inherit. How much you need? $6,000 more. I have $2,000. I need $8,000 total to get to Antarctica before the season closes. Mrs. Kowalski disappeared into her apartment and returned 5 minutes later with a coffee tin that rattled with the unmistakable sound of serious money. She counted out 60 $100 bills with the mechanical precision of someone who'd been saving for exactly this kind of emergency. This is my funeral money, she explained. But I decide I would rather help you than pay for expensive box to put my body in when I am dead. When you inherit your mother's facility, you pay me back. With interest, 10%, which is fair for emergency loan. Maya stared at the money, at Mrs. Kowalski's weathered hands holding out $6,000 like it was no big deal, like strangers just did this for each other. I can't. Yes, you can. Because I am old and I have seen many things, and I know that sometimes the bravest thing you do is accept help from someone who believes in you more than you believe in yourself. Mrs. Kowalski pressed the money into Maya's hands. Your mother built something important. You go protect it. And when you come back, you bring me piece of ice that is 1 million years old. This I would like very much. Maya hugged her, probably too hard, definitely too long. Mrs. Kowalski patted her back with the kind of comfort that mothers are supposed to provide, and Maya felt something crack open in her chest, grief and gratitude and terror all mixed together. The plane tickets cost $7,200 for 2 seats to Christchurch. She'd have $800 left for food, transport, and whatever other impossible expenses Antarctica decided to throw at her. It wasn't enough. It was barely anything, but it was more than she'd had yesterday. Lily took the news with the strange adaptability of children who'd learned that life changed without warning, and all you could do was hold tight to whatever stayed solid. Antarctica? Like with penguins. Yes, baby, like with penguins. And Grandma lived there. She worked there, at a research station she built herself. Lily processed this with the careful consideration of an 8-year-old trying to fit impossible pieces into a worldview that already included an absent father and an apartment that smelled like mildew. Was she brave? Maya thought about her mother choosing ice cores over family dinners, choosing climate data over answering her daughter's phone calls, choosing the truth written in ancient air bubbles over the messy complications of human relationships. Yes, Maya said. She was brave in ways I'm only starting to understand. They flew out 3 days later. Maya had called James Whitmore back, explained her plan, and heard what might have been approval or might have been disbelief in his voice. He'd arranged transport from McMurdo Station to Thermopolis Research Facility, contacted the facility's emergency systems to ensure the building was still habitable, and filed the legal motions necessary to establish Maya's claim. Dr. Verne won't leave peacefully, James warned. He's invested years in that facility and your mother's research. He believes it belongs to him regardless of what the will says. Then I'll convince him otherwise. Miss Chen, I should be clear about what you're walking into. Thermopolis is isolated. The nearest help is 200 miles away. If Dr. Verne decides to make things difficult, you'll be dealing with it alone until transport can be arranged. Are you prepared for that? Maya looked at Lily, at their packed bags, at the eviction notice she'd finally pulled from under the library book. She thought about her wedding ring in some pawn shop's display case, about Mrs. Kowalski's funeral money funding this impossible journey, about her mother's last words. Maya will understand why she has to go to Thermopolis. No, she said honestly, I'm not prepared, but I'm going anyway. The flight to Christchurch took 22 hours, including layovers. Lily slept through most of it, curled against Maya's side with the resilience of children who'd learned to find comfort anywhere. Maya didn't sleep. She read everything James had sent about the facility, about ice core research, about her mother's career. Dr. Patricia Chen had been brilliant. The articles made that clear. She developed new methods for analyzing trapped air in ancient ice, had published papers that shifted understanding of historical climate patterns, had built Thermopolis from nothing but determination and inherited money after the death of her own parents. She'd also been lonely. Maya could read it between the lines of interviews where Patricia talked about the purity of ice and the clarity you find in isolation. Her mother had chosen the frozen silence of Antarctica over the messy warmth of raising a daughter, and Maya still didn't know if she should be angry or sad or just exhausted by the whole thing. McMurdo Station appeared like a small city dropped onto ice and rock. Buildings clustered together for warmth and sanity, helicopters and vehicles designed for impossible terrain, people moving with the efficiency of those who understood that mistakes here had consequences beyond embarrassment. Their transport pilot was a woman named Sarah who looked like she'd been carved from the same ice as the landscape. You're the Chenair? The one trying to kick out Marcus Verne? I'm the Chenair. I'm not trying to kick anyone out. I'm claiming what my mother left me. Sarah's expression shifted into something like respect. Fair. Marcus is a piece of work. Brilliant scientist, terrible human. Been using your mother's equipment to run side projects for private clients. Climate deniers paying him to cherry-pick data that supports their narratives. Patricia would have killed him if she knew. The helicopter ride to Thermopolis took 90 minutes over landscape so barren and beautiful it made Maya's chest ache. Ice stretched in every direction, broken occasionally by rock formations that looked like they'd been there since Earth learned how to make mountains. The sky held a quality of light that seemed impossible, like the sun itself was confused about what time of day it should be. There, Sarah pointed. Thermopolis. The facility looked like something from a science fiction movie. Low-slung buildings connected by covered walkways, solar panels, and wind turbines designed for maximum efficiency. The whole thing painted in colors meant to stand out against ice, orange and blue and yellow that screamed human presence against nature's blank canvas. And, standing outside, the main entrance, arms crossed like he owned the place, was Dr. Marcus Vern. He was tall, 50s, with the kind of weathered face that came from years in harsh climates, and the kind of entitled posture that came from years of being the smartest person in every room. As the helicopter landed, kicking up ice crystals that caught light like scattered diamonds, Marcus's expression cycled through surprise, calculation, and something that looked disturbingly like amusement. Sarah cut the engine. "Want me to stay?" Maya looked at Lily, at this man who thought he could steal her mother's legacy, at the facility that represented Patricia Chen's life work spread out before them like a challenge. "No, but come back in 2 days. If I haven't contacted you by then, assume things went badly." Sarah's grin carried dark humor. "If things go badly, you'll freeze before anyone can mount a rescue. March weather down here doesn't forgive mistakes. You sure about this?" Maya wasn't sure about anything except that turning back now meant losing the only inheritance her mother had thought to leave her, meant returning to Boston with nothing but more debt and Mrs. Kowalski's disappointed face when she had to explain why the funeral money was gone. "I'm sure." They climbed out of the helicopter with the confidence neither of them felt. The cold hit like a physical force, stealing breath and making every exposed piece of skin burn with immediate warning. Maya had bought adequate cold weather gear with the last of her money. Parkas rated for -40, face masks, gloves so thick that fine motor control became a memory. Lily clutched her hand hard enough to hurt, and Maya squeezed back with the same desperate pressure. Marcus watched them approach. When he spoke, his voice carried across the ice-scraped silence with the kind of projection that came from years of lecturing to rooms full of students who didn't want to be there. "Maya, Chun, I wondered if you'd actually show up. Dr. Vern, I wondered if you'd actually be stealing my mother's equipment." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm not stealing. I'm preserving. Your mother's work needs someone who understands it, who can continue her legacy properly. Not some librarian who probably thinks ice cores are something you put in drinks." The insult landed exactly where he'd aimed it, at Maya's complete lack of scientific credentials, at her obvious desperation, at the fact that she was standing in Antarctica with an 8-year-old and no idea what she was doing. "My mother left me this facility in her will. That makes it mine, regardless of what you think about my qualifications. Your mother had dementia. She wasn't competent to make those decisions. She updated her will 6 months before she died, when she was still sharp enough to know exactly who deserved her life's work and who didn't." Marcus's expression darkened. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. This facility represents 30 years of research, 40,000 ice core samples containing data that could change everything we know about climate patterns. And you want to what? Sell it? Convert it into condos? Let it rot because you're too ignorant to appreciate what you've inherited?" Maya felt Lily pressing against her leg, felt the cold seeping through layers of expensive gear, felt her mother's absence like a presence that somehow made this all worse and better simultaneously. "I want to protect what my mother built from people who think they're entitled to it just because they showed up and decided it should be theirs." She moved toward the entrance. Marcus blocked her path. "You're not getting inside. I've changed the locks. Your mother's key codes don't work anymore. This is a private facility on contested property, and you're trespassing. I'm the legal heir. You're the one trespassing. Prove it. Show me documentation that holds up under international property law. Show me that you have any legal right to displace someone who's been maintaining this facility for 4 months while you were nowhere to be found." Maya pulled out her phone, miraculously still holding charge despite the cold, and displayed the estate documents James had sent. Marcus barely glanced at them. Disputed will, dementia diagnosis, established presence. "My lawyers say I can keep you out until a judge rules otherwise. And there's no judge in Antarctica, sweetheart. So unless you want to freeze to death proving a point, I suggest you get back in that helicopter and go home." The helicopter's engines were already spinning up. Sarah was preparing to leave, heading back to McMurdo before weather made the return trip impossible. In another 60 seconds, Maya and Lily would be standing alone on the ice with nowhere to go and no way to get there. Lily's voice cut through the wind and engine noise and Maya's rising panic. My grandma's thermometers. She wrote about them. In her letter, she said the thermometers all read 0, but that wasn't true. She said Maya would understand. Marcus's face went blank. Not neutral, blank. Like someone had reached inside his brain and flipped a switch that controlled basic facial expression. What letter? Maya pulled it from her inner pocket, the envelope James had given her with specific instructions. Do not open until you're at the facility. Your mother was very clear about that. She'd obeyed. Hadn't read it on the plane, hadn't opened it at McMurdo, had kept it sealed through sheer force of will and the fear that her mother's final words might be disappointment or blame or just more evidence that Patricia Chen had been better at analyzing ice than understanding her own daughter. Marcus lunged for it. Actually lunged, his scientific composure shattering into desperation, so raw it was almost frightening. Maya jerked back, stumbling on the ice, pulling Lily with her as Marcus's hand grabbed at empty air where the envelope had been half a second earlier. Give me that letter. Now. Why? It's addressed to me. Because if Patricia told you about the thermometers, if she explained what she found. Marcus's voice cracked. She wouldn't. She couldn't have. We agreed to keep it secret until we'd verified, until we'd published properly, until what? Maya demanded. Until you could take credit for her discovery, until you could sell whatever she found to the highest bidder, until you could erase her name from research that belonged to her. The helicopter lifted off, its departure feeling ominous rather than simply practical. Sarah would be back in 2 days. 2 days alone on the ice with a man who'd just revealed that there was something in this facility worth lying about, worth stealing a building for, worth changing locks and filing legal claims that tied up estates for months. Marcus composed himself with visible effort, his face settling back into professional neutrality. I worked with your mother for 15 years. We were partners. The discovery we made in the deep sample chamber, if it even qualifies as a discovery rather than an instrumentation error, that belongs to both of us. She can't leave you research partnership in a will. What discovery? Read your mother's letter. Then we'll talk, like adults, inside, where we won't freeze to death making dramatic statements on the ice. He turned and walked toward the facility entrance, his back to Maya and Lily in a gesture that was either tremendous trust or tremendous arrogance. The door opened at his touch. Biometric scanner. She realized he'd reprogrammed everything to respond only to him. And warm air spilled out into Antarctic cold like an invitation or a trap. Maya looked at Lily. Her daughter's face was already showing signs of cold exposure despite the expensive gear. Pink cheeks that would turn a frostbite if they stayed outside much longer. Blue lips that meant her core temperature was dropping. 8 years old and already too familiar with situations where all the options were bad and you just had to choose the least terrible path forward. Emmy, what do we do? Maya opened her mother's letter. Her hands shook from cold or fear or just the weight of finally reading words that Patricia Chen had written specifically for her daughter, knowing she'd be dead when Maya found them. The handwriting was shaky, dementia making its presence known even in the formation of letters. But the message was clear. Maya, if you're reading this, you're standing outside Thermopolis, and Marcus is trying to stop you from entering. He will lie. He will threaten. He will make you doubt that I wanted you to have this. Don't believe him. In the deep sample chamber, 400 meters below the main lab, there are 23 ice cores marked with red tags. These samples came from depths we're not supposed to have reached, from ice that's not supposed to exist in that location. The thermometers in that chamber all read 0. They always read 0. We thought it was equipment malfunction. It was a malfunction. Maya, those samples are worth more than this entire facility, more than 30 years of research, more than anything I've published or discovered in my entire career. Marcus knows. He's been trying to extract them since the day after I died. The combination to the sample chamber is your birthday plus Lily's birthday. Don't let him see you enter it. Don't tell him what you find. And whatever you do, don't let him convince you that this discovery belongs to both of us. He tried to kill me for it once. I suspect my death wasn't as natural as the coroner's report suggested. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me. I'm sorry I chose ice over family, data over love, truth over comfort. But I'm not sorry I left you this. You're smarter than you think, braver than you believe, and about to inherit something that will change everything. The thermometers all read 0 because the samples aren't frozen. They're crystallized, and what's inside them shouldn't exist. Not here, not naturally, not without implications that will rewrite everything we thought we knew. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm trusting you to finish what I started. Mom. Maya's vision blurred. She read it twice more, her brain trying to process impossible information while her body screamed at her to get inside before the cold became dangerous. Lily tugged her sleeve. What did Grandma find? I don't know yet, baby. But I think it's something important enough that Marcus would do anything to keep it. The decision crystallized with the kind of clarity that only comes when every option is terrible and you're too cold to overthink. They would go inside. They would pretend Maya didn't know about the sample chamber. They would wait until Marcus showed his hand. And then they would fight for whatever Patricia Chen had deemed valuable enough to die protecting. Maya folded the letter carefully and tucked it back in her inner pocket. She looked at Thermopolis Research Station, this impossible building her mother had built in the most inhospitable place on Earth, this inheritance that came with secrets and danger and a man who might be a murderer. Okay, she said to Lily, to Marcus watching from the doorway, to her mother's ghost hovering somewhere in the Antarctic wind. Let's go inside. Let's talk. Let's see what's worth killing for. Marcus smiled like he'd won something. Maya smiled back and thought about thermometers that always read 0, about ice that shouldn't exist, about mothers who chose research over family and then try to give their daughters the world at the very end. She thought about Mrs. Kowalski's funeral money and wedding rings in pawn shops and 8-year-olds who deserve stability instead of adventures. And she thought, I'm going to win this. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs. I'm going to protect what my mother left me and make sure Lily never has to choose between food and medical bills again. They stepped through the entrance in a warmth that felt like permission to keep fighting. The door sealed behind them with a sound like promises locking into place. The interior of Thermopolis Research Station hit Maya with sensory overload that had nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with the sudden realization that her mother had built something extraordinary. The entry corridor opened into a central hub that could have been lifted from a high-budget science facility in California or Massachusetts, not a building constructed on Antarctic ice 200 miles from civilization. Floor-to-ceiling windows on one side revealed the impossible landscape beyond, white stretching to infinity, broken only by the occasional rock formation that looked like Earth's bones pushing through frozen skin. The other walls held monitor arrays displaying data streams Maya couldn't interpret. Temperature gradients, wind patterns, seismic readings, atmospheric composition measurements that scrolled past in endless numeric precision. Equipment filled every available surface with the organized chaos of serious research. Mass spectrometers, gas chromatographs, electron microscopes, laser ablation systems. Maya recognized the names from her mother's papers without understanding their function. Each machine probably cost more than Maya had earned in her entire adult life, and there were dozens of them, all humming with the quiet efficiency of technology, doing exactly what it was designed to do. Lily's grip on Maya's hand tightened. The 8-year-old's eyes went wide, taking in surroundings that looked like every science fiction movie she'd ever watched compressed into reality. This is where Grandma worked? Marcus moved through the space with proprietary ease, hanging his parka on a hook with the casual motion of someone coming home. His voice carried that same pedagogical tone, like he was conducting a tour for students who should feel privileged by his attention. This is the main laboratory. Your mother spent approximately 280 days per year here for the last 15 years. She had living quarters in the East Wing, research space in the West, and the sample storage chambers below. Thermopolis represents the single most comprehensive ice core analysis facility in private hands. Private hands that belong to me now, Maya said, keeping her voice level despite the fury building in her chest. According to my mother's will. According to a will executed by a woman with documented cognitive decline. Marcus pulled off his gloves with deliberate precision. My attorneys have affidavits from 3 neurologists confirming Patricia's dementia had progressed to the point where legal decision-making capacity was compromised. My attorney says those affidavits won't hold up because Mom updated her will before the dementia progressed significantly. Medical records prove she was competent when she excluded you. Marcus's smile carried edges sharp enough to cut. Then I suppose we'll let the courts decide. In the meantime, I maintain operational control of this facility. You're welcome to stay as my guests. Antarctica weather doesn't forgive people who refuse shelter, but you don't touch the equipment, you don't access the sample chambers, and you definitely don't interfere with the research I'm conducting. Lily's voice cut through the tension with the blunt honesty of children who hadn't learned that some truths were supposed to stay unspoken. You're a bad man. You're trying to steal from us. Marcus's expression flickered, surprise, then something darker before settling back into professional neutrality. I'm a scientist protecting 30 years of research from people who wouldn't recognize its value if it crystallized in front of them. Your mother understood that. That's why she made me her research partner, gave me access to everything, trusted me with discoveries that he caught himself, the sentence dying unfinished. Maya filed that away. Discoveries plural. Whatever was in that sample chamber, Marcus considered it part of something larger. She trusted you enough to exclude you from her will. Seems like she changed her mind about that partnership before she died. Or the dementia changed it for her. Patricia wasn't thinking clearly at the end. She became paranoid, accusatory, convinced I was trying to steal her work when I'd spent 15 years helping her build this place. Marcus moved to one of the monitor arrays, fingers dancing across controls with practiced familiarity. Do you know what we discovered 3 months before she died? In the deep samples. Maya's pulse jumped. He was going to tell her. Actually volunteer information about the chamber her mother had warned her to keep secret. Either tremendous arrogance or a test to see how much Patricia had shared before dying. Why don't you tell me? Maya kept her expression neutral. Curious, but not too curious, like someone humoring a professor's tangent rather than someone whose mother had just warned that this man might be a killer. Marcus pulled up images on the central display. Ice cores in cross-section. The samples looking like abstract art. Layers of compressed time rendered visible. Each striation representing years or decades or centuries of snowfall compacted into geological record. Traditional ice core analysis measures trapped air bubbles, particulate matter, isotopic composition. We can reconstruct temperature, atmospheric content, volcanic activity, even solar patterns going back hundreds of thousands of years. Your mother was brilliant at this. The best I've ever worked with. Lily had wandered toward the windows, drawn by the alien landscape beyond the glass. Maya kept half her attention on her daughter, while tracking Marcus's every word for lies or truth or the dangerous space between them. But these samples, Marcus zoomed in on one particular core section. These showed readings that shouldn't be possible. The crystalline structure was wrong. Not standard ice formed from compressed snow, but something else. Something that required temperatures and pressures that don't naturally occur in ice sheet formation. What kind of temperatures? Absolute zero. Or near enough that our equipment couldn't measure the difference. Marcus's voice dropped into reverence that sounded genuine. These samples came from 3,200 meters depth, Maya. That's ice that formed 800,000 years ago. And somehow, impossibly, it reached temperatures that shouldn't exist outside laboratory conditions or deep space. Maya thought about her mother's letter. The thermometers all read 0. They always read 0. We thought it was equipment malfunction. It wasn't. So you found old ice that got really cold. Why does that matter enough to steal a building over? Marcus's laugh held condescension thick enough to choke on. Because old ice that got really cold shouldn't exist in Antarctic ice sheets. Because the only way to reach those temperatures naturally involved conditions that would rewrite everything we understand about climate history. Because trapped inside that impossible ice are air bubbles containing atmospheric composition from 800,000 years ago, preserved in crystalline structures that standard analysis can't penetrate without destroying the samples. He turned to face Maya directly, and for the first time she saw what might have been genuine excitement beneath the arrogance. Do you understand what I'm saying? We found ice that shouldn't exist, containing air that standard methods can't access, representing climate data from periods we've only theorized about. And your mother wanted to keep it secret, wanted to verify and re-verify before publishing, wanted to make absolutely certain we weren't making fools of ourselves with contaminated samples or instrumentation errors. But you didn't want to wait. I wanted to protect the discovery. Patricia was getting paranoid, talking about corporate espionage and data theft, convinced that someone was trying to steal our research. The dementia made her see conspiracies everywhere. She changed the sample chamber access codes, locked me out of my own work, accused me of, again he caught himself. It doesn't matter. What matters is that those samples represent the most significant climate discovery in 50 years, and they need someone who can analyze them properly. Not a part-time librarian who thinks science is something that happens in other people's lives. The insult landed where he'd aimed it, but Maya had spent 18 months absorbing worse from bankruptcy lawyers and social workers and David's attorney during the divorce. She'd learned to let words slide off while holding tight to what actually mattered. Show me the samples. Marcus's expression shifted to calculation. Why? Because if they're as valuable as you claim, I want to see what I'm fighting for. And if they're not, if you're exaggerating to justify squatting in my mother's facility, I want to know that too. A long pause while Marcus weighed options. Finally, the sample chamber requires biometric access. Only Patricia and I had clearance. When she locked me out before she died, she must have revoked my credentials. I've been trying to override the security for 4 months without success. Lie. Maya could hear it in the too casual delivery, see it in the way his eyes didn't quite meet hers. Marcus knew exactly how to access that chamber. He was testing whether Maya knew the combination her mother had left in the letter. Then I guess we're both locked out, Maya said, matching his false casualness. Shame. Would have been nice to see what Mom thought was worth dying for. Something flickered across Marcus's face, disappointment or relief or frustrated calculation. I'm working on cracking the access codes. Give me another week and I'll have it open. Then you can see for yourself what your mother discovered, or what you discovered and she tried to protect from you. Patricia was my partner. We shared everything. The discovery was collaborative, right up until she wrote a will that gave you exactly nothing and warned me you might have killed her. Maya let the words hang in the warm air of the laboratory, watching Marcus's reaction like she'd learned to watch Lily's face when her daughter was deciding whether to tell the truth or risk a comforting lie. Marcus went very still. Not calm, still. The dangerous, kind of motionless that came right before violence or confession or both. She told you that? In her letter? She suggested your partnership wasn't as mutual as you claim, and that her death might not have been as natural as the coroner ruled. Your mother died of a heart attack brought on by altitude stress and undiagnosed arrhythmia. The autopsy was clear. Nothing suspicious, nothing unusual. Just a 72-year-old woman whose heart gave out in one of the most demanding environments on Earth. Marcus's voice carried practiced certainty, like he'd rehearsed this explanation multiple times. If she suggested otherwise in her final correspondence, that's the dementia talking, creating narratives that justified her paranoia. Lily's voice cut across the laboratory from her position by the windows. Mom, there's someone outside. Maya's heart jumped. She crossed to her daughter's side, pressing against the glass that separated them from temperatures that would kill in minutes. At first she saw nothing but ice and wind and the endless white that made depth perception impossible. Then movement. A figure in heavy cold weather gear approaching from the direction of the equipment sheds, moving with purpose toward the main entrance. Marcus joined them at the window, his body going rigid with recognition. That's impossible. Transport's not scheduled until next week. No one should be out here. The figure reached the entrance. Through the triple-pane glass, Maya heard the outer airlock cycle open, heard boots stamping eyes from their treads, heard the inner door unsealing with a hiss of equalizing pressure. A woman entered, pulling off her face mask to reveal sharp features weathered by years and harsh climates and sharper experiences navigating even harsher human territories. She looked to be in her 60s, with steel-gray hair pulled into a severe bun and eyes that assessed Maya and Lily with the practiced efficiency of someone trained to identify threats and opportunities simultaneously. Dr. Verne. Her voice carried crisp British accent and complete lack of warmth. I see we have visitors. Marcus's composure, already cracking around the edges, fractured completely. Dr. Reeves, you're 3 days early. We agreed. We agreed to nothing. You suggested a timeline that suited your purposes. I chose to arrive when it suited mine. Dr. Reeves turned her attention to Maya, studying her with an intensity that made Maya feel like a specimen being evaluated for analysis. You must be Maya Chen, Patricia's daughter. I'm Dr. Evelyn Reeves, climatology consultant for Meridian Energy Solutions. Your mother and I corresponded extensively about her research in the year before her death. Maya's instincts, sharpened by 18 months of navigating people who smiled while lying, screamed warning. Mom never mentioned you. Your mother was cautious about revealing her discoveries before proper verification. Understandable, given the implications. Dr. Reeves removed her gloves with the same deliberate precision Marcus had used, a gesture that suggested they'd learned professional mannerisms from the same institutional playbook. But she did share certain preliminary findings, enough to suggest that her deep sample analysis had uncovered data that could revolutionize our understanding of historical climate patterns. And you just happened to show up 3 days after I arrived to claim my inheritance? Dr. Reeves's smile carried no humor. I've been monitoring the legal dispute. When Mr. Whitmore filed your emergency claim and arranged your transport, I decided it was time to make my own interests clear. Meridian Energy Solutions is prepared to offer substantial compensation for access to Dr. Chen's samples and research data. How substantial? $46 million for full rights to the deep chamber samples and all associated analysis. Dr. Reeves delivered the number like someone ordering coffee, casual and certain. We'd also cover all legal expenses related to establishing your ownership, ensure Dr. Verne is removed from the property, and provide additional funding for facility maintenance if you choose to continue your mother's work. The number hit Maya like physics she couldn't process. $46 million. Mrs. Kowalski's funeral money suddenly seemed impossibly small. Her wedding ring's $800 pawn value laughable. The entire desperate scramble to get here rendered almost comic by the scale of what was apparently at stake. Lily's hand found Maya's. The girls gripped tight with confusion and the beginning of understanding that the adults were talking about money in amounts that changed lives. Emmy? Is she saying the ice is worth that much? Not the ice, sweetheart. What's trapped inside it? Dr. Reeves crouched to Lily's level with practiced ease, her voice shifting into something almost warm. Your grandmother discovered something remarkable. Information that could help us understand how Earth's climate worked hundreds of thousands of years ago. That knowledge is valuable to people who want to make better predictions about what might happen in the future. Marcus finally found his voice, fury bleeding through professional composure. You can't sell Patricia's research. It's not yours to sell. The discovery was collaborative, the samples were collected under joint custody, and I have documented proof that. You have documented proof that you changed locks on a building you don't own and sold equipment that belonged to Dr. Chen's estate. Dr. Reeves stood, her attention leaving Lily and refocusing on Marcus with predatory precision. My attorneys have been very thorough, Dr. Verne. We know about the $200,000 in liquidated assets. We know about the side contracts with climate denial organizations. We know that you've been systematically stripping this facility while the estate was in probate limbo. She turned back to Maya, which is why Meridian is prepared to purchase not just the samples, but testimony that will ensure Dr. Verne faces both civil and criminal charges for theft and fraud. We protect our investments, Ms. Chen, and if you accept our offer, you become one of those investments. Maya's head spun. $46 million plus legal protection, plus the satisfaction of watching Marcus face consequences for attempting to steal her mother's legacy. It was everything she'd come here hoping to find wrapped in a package that looked almost too perfect to be real. What's the catch? Dr. Reeves's smile widened slightly, appreciation for Maya's skepticism evident. The catch is that Meridian Energy Solutions is a private research firm funded by parties interested in specific outcomes. We want your mother's samples because preliminary analysis suggests they contradict certain narratives about historical climate stability. Data that supports our clients' positions regarding natural climate variability versus anthropogenic forcing. The academic language couldn't quite hide what Dr. Reeves was actually saying. Climate denial. Corporate interests wanting to cherry-pick data that suggested human activity wasn't driving modern warming. Maya's mother had spent her career documenting the opposite, that current. Changes were unprecedented. The human influence was undeniable. That the data screamed warnings anyone honest would hear. You want to use Mom's research to lie about climate change. We want to use your mother's research to present a complete picture that includes data points currently being suppressed by scientific consensus that has become political rather than empirical. Dr. Reeves's voice carried the reasonable tone of someone who'd perfected the art of making moral bankruptcy sound like intellectual honesty. But what we want doesn't change what we're offering. $46 million, Ms. Chen. Financial security for you and your daughter. Justice for your mother's legacy. Freedom from a struggle that's defined your life since your husband abandoned you. The last part landed like a punch. Dr. Reeves had researched Maya's circumstances, knew about David's departure and the financial devastation it created, understood exactly which pressure points would make $46 million feel less like moral compromise and more like salvation. Lily's voice came small and uncertain. Mom, are we really going to sell Grandma's ice? Maya looked at her daughter, at this 8-year-old who'd learned too young that money mattered more than it should, that adults made terrible choices when desperation overwhelmed principle, that sometimes the difference between right and wrong got blurry when you were trying to survive. She thought about Mrs. Kowalski's funeral money, about her wedding ring in a pawn shop, about eviction notices and medical bills, and the exhausted math of stretching dollars across weeks that needed more than dollars could buy. She thought about her mother choosing research over family, ice cores over comfort, truth over easy lies. And she thought about what Patricia Chen had written in that final letter. Don't let him convince you that this discovery belongs to both of us. He tried to kill me for it once. If Marcus had been willing to kill for these samples, if Dr. Reeves was offering $46 million to acquire them, then whatever was in that deep chamber mattered more than money. Mattered in ways that would ripple beyond Maya's personal desperation into territory where choices had consequences she couldn't fully predict. I need to see the samples first, Maya said. Before I make any decisions about selling them, I want to understand what my mother discovered. Dr. Reeves nodded like this was expected and reasonable. Of course, Dr. Verne claims he's been unable to access the sample chamber. Perhaps your mother shared access codes with you before her death. She didn't. Another lie, smooth as the first. Maya was getting good at this, at hiding truth behind carefully maintained deception, at protecting what mattered while presenting a face that revealed nothing important. 18 months of navigating social services and family court had taught her that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was control what other people knew about your situation. Marcus watched this exchange with barely concealed frustration. The biometric security requires either Patricia's credentials, which died with her, or the master override combination. I've tried every significant date in Patricia's life. Birth dates, hire dates, publication dates. Nothing works. What about her daughter's birthday? Dr. Reeves suggested. People often use family dates for personal security. Maya's heart rate spiked, but she kept her expression neutral. My birthday is July 15th. Feel free to try it. Marcus moved to a terminal near the laboratory's south wall, pulling up what looked like a security interface. The chamber requires 8-digit code. Month, day, year, July 15th, 1987. He entered it. The system's rejection came immediately, a soft chime that sounded almost apologetic. Marcus tried variations. Day, month, year. Year, month, day. Different separators. Nothing worked because Maya's birthday wasn't the code. The code was her birthday plus Lily's birthday, and Maya had no intention of sharing that information while Dr. Reeves and Marcus were watching like vultures circling something not quite dead enough to safely approach. Could be her granddaughter's birthday, Dr. Reeves suggested. Her eyes never left Maya's face, reading for tells and reactions. When was Lily born? March 22nd, 2017. Maya delivered the truth like it didn't matter, like she wasn't simultaneously planning how to get to that chamber alone, how to see what her mother had died protecting before anyone else could claim it or destroy it or distort it into something that served interests Patricia would have despised. Marcus tried Lily's birthday in various formats. Same rejection chime. Same apologetic tone, suggesting the system was very sorry, but you're not authorized, and please stop trying before security protocols lock them out completely. Perhaps the combination is something less obvious, Dr. Reeves said. A significant date from Dr. Chen's career, her first publication, the day she opened this facility. They spent 30 minutes testing theories while Maya watched and occasionally suggested dates she knew were wrong, participating in the charade of trying to help while actually ensuring they made no progress. Lily had curled up on a bench near the windows, exhausted by travel and stress and the adult conversations that swirled around her like weather patterns she couldn't quite predict. Finally, Dr. Reeves checked her watch with visible frustration. I need to establish communications with my team. May I use your satellite link? Dr. Vern. East Wing. Second door. Equipment room. Marcus didn't look up from the terminal, where he was still trying code combinations with the obsessive focus of someone convinced the answer was just one more attempt away. Dr. Reeves left, her departure feeling strategic rather than necessary. Maya suspected the woman wanted to report on the situation, receive new instructions, possibly coordinate with lawyers or handlers or whoever else Meridian Energy Solutions employed to extract valuable data from people who didn't want to sell. The moment Dr. Reeves disappeared down the corridor, Marcus abandoned the terminal and crossed to Maya. He stopped close enough that she could smell coffee and old sweat on his breath, see the red spiderwebbing in his eyes that suggested multiple sleepless nights. You know the code, he said. Flat statement, not question. Patricia told you in that letter. That's why you're not worried about accessing the chamber. Maya held his gaze without flinching. If I knew the code, why would I sit here letting you waste 30 minutes on failed attempts? Because you're smart enough to wait until Evelyn leaves. Smart enough to not reveal what you know while there are witnesses who might testify about code sources in later legal proceedings. Marcus's smile carried a grudging respect that made Maya's skin crawl. Your mother was like that too, cautious to the point of paranoia. Wouldn't share data until she'd verified it 17 different ways. Wouldn't trust conclusions until she'd eliminated every possible alternative explanation. Sounds like good scientific practice. Sounds like someone who valued being right more than being first. Do you know how many discoveries Patricia sat on while she verified? How many papers she could have published if she'd been willing to accept reasonable certainty instead of demanding absolute proof? Marcus's frustration bled through, raw and bitter. 15 years I worked with her. 15 years of watching her refuse to claim credit for brilliant analysis because she wasn't quite certain enough. And now she's given everything to you, someone who probably can't even read her research notes, while I'm left fighting to prove I deserve recognition for work I did. Work you did, or work you try to steal credit for. I collected half those samples, analyzed their crystalline structures, developed the protocols for measuring extreme temperature variations. The deep chamber discovery was collaborative even if Patricia wanted to pretend she'd done it alone. Marcus's voice dropped to something almost pleading. I'm not the villain here, Maya. I'm a scientist who devoted his career to climate research and deserves recognition for that contribution. Your mother couldn't see past her paranoia at the end. The dementia made her believe I was her enemy when I was actually her closest ally. Maya thought about her mother's letter. He tried to kill me for it once. Either Patricia's accusation was true, Marcus had attempted murder, or the dementia had created false narratives where none existed. Either way, someone was lying and Maya's ability to determine which person was telling the truth would define what happened next. "If you're really her ally," Maya said carefully, "then help me understand what she discovered. Not the technical details I won't comprehend. The implications. Why does this matter enough that Dr. Reeves is offering $46 million? Why does it matter enough that you changed locks and started liquidating equipment?" Marcus studied her for a long moment, calculation flickering behind his eyes. Finally, he nodded toward the sample chamber's security terminal. "I'll tell you, but not here. Not where Evelyn might overhear. Come with me." He led Maya and Lily through the facility's west wing, past equipment rooms and storage areas, down a corridor that descended gradually into the ice itself. The temperature dropped despite the heating systems, and Maya pulled Lily closer, sharing warmth in the increasing cold. They stopped at a door marked Sample Archive, temperature-controlled access only. Marcus pulled out a key card and swiped it through a reader that beeped approval. The door unsealed with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Inside, rows of cylindrical containers stretched into the distance, each one holding ice cores wrapped in protective material and stored at carefully regulated temperatures. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the air held a quality of stillness that suggested this space existed outside normal time, a repository for moments stolen from geology and preserved in crystalline structure. "Your mother's life work," Marcus said quietly. 40,000 samples representing 800,000 years of climate history. Each core tells a story about temperature, atmospheric composition, volcanic activity, solar radiation. Together, they form a continuous record that lets us understand how Earth's climate has changed over timescales that make human civilization look like a brief footnote. Lily's eyes went wide, tracking the rows that seemed endless. Grandma collected all of this. She supervised the collection, managed the analysis, built the systems that let us extract meaningful data from frozen air bubbles and mineral deposits. Marcus moved deeper into the archive, his voice taking on the rhythm of someone who'd given this tour before. Most ice core research focuses on the last few 100,000 years. But Patricia was interested in the older samples, the deep cores that required drilling through 3,000 meters of accumulated ice to reach frozen time from the earliest periods of the current glacial cycles. He stopped at a section marked with red tags. 23 samples, just as Patricia's letter had specified, each container labeled with depth markers and collection dates that ranged across the last 5 years. "These," Marcus said, "are the impossible samples, the ones that shouldn't exist." Maya moved closer, examining the containers without touching them. The ice visible through transparent sections looked different from the other samples, darker somehow, with a crystalline structure that caught light in unusual ways. What makes them impossible? The temperature at which they formed. Standard ice from Antarctic core samples shows crystalline patterns consistent with temperatures ranging from -20 to -60 Celsius, depending on depth and historical climate conditions. These samples. Marcus pulled out a tablet, displaying analysis data that meant nothing to Maya's untrained eyes. These show crystalline structures that only form at temperatures approaching absolute zero. -273 Celsius. The point where molecular motion effectively stops. And that shouldn't happen naturally. Not in Antarctic ice sheets. Not at depths where pressure and geothermal heating should prevent extreme cold. Not in samples representing periods when Earth's climate was relatively stable. Marcus's excitement was genuine now, the professional barriers dropping away to reveal someone who'd genuinely been captivated by this discovery. "Do you understand what I'm saying? We found ice that formed under conditions that violate everything we know about glacial physics. And trapped inside that ice are air bubbles that preserve atmospheric composition from 800,000 years ago, but in a crystalline matrix that prevents standard analysis methods from accessing them without destroying the samples." Maya remembered her mother's words. What's inside them shouldn't exist. Not here. Not naturally. Not without implications that will rewrite everything we thought we knew. "What do you think is inside them?" Marcus hesitated, and Maya realized he was about to share something he'd been keeping close. A secret even Dr. Reeves might not know. Patricia managed to extract one sample, tiny amount, less than a gram, without compromising the core's integrity. She ran spectroscopic analysis on the trapped air, and the atmospheric composition was wrong. Not slightly off from expected values, completely wrong. Oxygen levels 40% higher than anything recorded from that period. Carbon dioxide concentrations that matched modern industrial levels, not pre-human baseline. Methane ratios that suggested biological activity on scales that shouldn't have existed 800,000 years ago. Maya's pulse quickened despite not fully understanding the implications. What does that mean? It means either our samples are contaminated, which Patricia ruled out after exhaustive verification, or it means the climate 800,000 years ago was radically different from what every other data source suggests. Different in ways that would undermine current models, challenge established theories, and require rewriting textbooks about how Earth's climate cycles function. Marcus's voice dropped. Or it means these samples aren't from 800,000 years ago at all. It means the ice formed under conditions and at times that don't match the geological context where we found them. How is that possible? It's not, which is why your mother was so cautious about publishing. She knew these results would be controversial, would face immediate challenge from the scientific community, would require overwhelming evidence before anyone would accept them as legitimate. She wanted to analyze all 23 samples, extract trapped air from each one, verify the impossible readings weren't flukes or contamination artifacts. She wanted to be absolutely certain before making claims that would make her look either brilliantly revolutionary or completely incompetent. Lily had been listening with the intense focus of children processing information beyond their experience, but not beyond their intelligence. Her voice cut through the cold archive air. So Grandma found ice that's not supposed to exist, with air inside it that's wrong, and people want to buy it because it proves something important? Marcus smiled at her, genuine warmth breaking through the professional veneer. Exactly right. Very good. And you want to analyze it to prove Grandma's discovery was real, but Dr. Reeves wants to buy it to prove something else? Lily's brow furrowed. What does she want to prove? The question hung in the cold air, sharper than any adult might have phrased it. Maya watched Marcus's face cycle through responses, dismissal, evasion, practiced academic explanation, before settling on something that might have been honesty. Dr. Reeves works for people who believe current climate change is less severe than mainstream science claims. If these samples show that atmospheric composition 800,000 years ago matched modern industrial levels, that would suggest natural variability can produce the same conditions we're seeing now. It would undermine arguments about human-caused warming, support narratives that current changes are normal fluctuations rather than unprecedented disruption. But that's not what Grandma thought these samples meant. Lily said with the blunt certainty of children who hadn't learned that sometimes you're supposed to pretend uncertainty about things that seem obvious. No, Marcus admitted. Patricia thought the readings proved something else entirely. She thought. He caught himself, the professional caution reasserting itself. She had theories, unverified theories that she refused to share even with me, which is why she locked the sample chamber before she died, why she excluded me from her will, why she apparently warned you I might have killed her. Maya heard the genuine hurt beneath his words, saw something that looked like real grief mixing with the frustration and anger. For the first time since arriving, she wondered if Marcus actually had cared about Patricia Chen beyond just the research value she represented. Did you? The question came out before Maya could stop it. Did you try to kill my mother? Marcus's laugh carried no humor. If I'd wanted Patricia dead, I'd have arranged an accident that looked natural. Heart attack in a 72-year-old woman with undiagnosed arrhythmia working in high-altitude conditions? That's the most obvious natural death possible. If I'd killed her, I'd have made it look like something else. Equipment failure, exposure, fall on the ice. Something that wouldn't point back to cardiac causes that could be easily verified through autopsy. The logic was sound, but made Maya's skin crawl with its cold calculation. Marcus had clearly thought about this, had analyzed the possibilities with the same systematic precision he probably brought to his research. Whether that meant he'd acted on those thoughts or just contemplated them theoretically, Maya couldn't determine. Footsteps echoed from the corridor, Dr. Reeves returning from her communication session. Marcus's expression shifted back to professional neutrality, the mask sliding into place, so quickly Maya wondered how much of their conversation had been genuine versus performance. "Think about my position," Marcus said quickly, voice low enough that only Maya could hear. "I've devoted my career to this research. I deserve recognition for that work regardless of what your mother's will says. If you sell to Meridian, you become complicit in distorting science for corporate profit. If you try to cut me out completely, I'll fight you in court until there's nothing left except legal bills and destroyed samples. But if you acknowledge my contribution, if we work together to analyze these cores properly, we could publish findings that change everything we know about climate history. And you get the credit you think you deserve. We both get credit. You as Patricia's heir, me as her research partner. Shared authorship on papers that would make us both famous." Marcus's smile returned, calculating rather than warm. Where you could trust Evelyn Reeves to honor her promises, take the $46 million, and spend the rest of your life wondering what your mother actually discovered and whether selling it was the right choice. Dr. Reeves entered the archive before Maya could respond, her sharp eyes taking in the scene with evident disapproval. "Dr. Verne, I thought we agreed you wouldn't attempt to influence Ms. Chen's decision before she'd had time to properly consider Meridian's offer. I was simply providing context about the sample's significance. Ms. Chen deserves to understand what she's inheriting before making choices about its disposition." "How considerate." Dr. Reeves's tone suggested she believed nothing of the sort. She turned to Maya. "I've spoken with my superiors. They're prepared to increase our offer to $50 million if you can provide access to the sample chamber within the next 48 hours. They're also willing to arrange immediate extraction and transport, getting you and your daughter off the ice before weather conditions deteriorate." $50 million. The number seemed almost abstract in its enormousness, like someone had stopped counting real money and started using numbers that only existed in theoretical spaces where economics intersected with fantasy. Maya looked at the red tag samples, at these containers holding ice that shouldn't exist and air that violated known atmospheric history. She thought about her mother spending years collecting them, analyzing them, protecting them from people who would distort their meaning for profit or prestige. She thought about Mrs. Kowalski's funeral money and wedding rings in pawn shops and 8-year-olds who deserve stability. And she thought about her mother's final words, "You're smarter than you think, braver than you believe, and about to inherit something that will change everything." "I need to see them first," Maya said. "The actual cores, not just these containers. I need to understand what my mother died protecting before I decide whether to sell them or continue her work or burn them all to keep them from being misused." Dr. Reeves's expression hardened. "That requires accessing the sample chamber, which you've claimed is impossible without the access code." "I claimed I don't know the code." "That's different from saying it's impossible." Maya met the woman's sharp gaze without flinching. "My mother left me instructions. I just need time to work through them without an audience analyzing my every move." "Unacceptable. If you access those samples, we need to verify you're not contaminating or damaging them. Then you'll have to trust that I'm smart enough to not destroy something worth $50 million. Maya picked up Lily, the girl's weight familiar and grounding. "We'll be in my mother's quarters. I need to read her research notes, understand her methodology, and figure out what she wanted me to do with this discovery. You and Dr. Verne can continue your negotiations or security override attempts or whatever else you were planning. But you're not watching me solve the puzzle she left specifically for me." She walked out of the archive before either Dr. Reeves or Marcus could object, carrying Lily through corridors that led toward the East Wing, where Patricia Chen had lived for 280 days a year, where her mother's ghost waited in spaces Maya had never seen, where secrets might be hidden in research notes and personal effects, and the accumulated details of a life spent measuring frozen time. Behind her, She heard Dr. Reeves and Marcus begin arguing in low tones about strategies and timelines, and who had priority access to samples neither of them legally owned. Ahead, she saw a door marked Private Quarters P-Chun, and in her pocket, her mother's letter waited with its cryptic instruction. The combination is your birthday plus Lily's birthday. Maya was about to find out if Patricia Chen's final gift was salvation or just another complicated way to fail. Patricia Chen's private quarters looked like someone had tried to transplant a small piece of normalcy into the most abnormal place on Earth. The space occupied maybe 400 square feet. Living area with a worn couch and reading chair, kitchenette with a two-burner stove and mini fridge, bedroom visible through an open door showing a single bed made with military precision. Books lined every available wall surface. Titles ranging from glaciology textbooks to mystery novels to what looked like poetry collections in languages Maya couldn't read. But it was the photographs that stopped Maya cold. They covered one entire wall in a collage that must have taken years to assemble. Maya, at 6 months old, held by her father while Patricia stood slightly apart, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Maya's first day of school, gap-toothed grin and backpack too large for her small frame. Birthday parties and holiday gatherings, and ordinary moments that Patricia apparently hadn't been too busy to document, even if she'd been too busy to attend them. And near the center, taking pride of place in a simple silver frame, Lily's birth announcement. The one Maya had sent as a courtesy because you're supposed to tell your mother when you have a grandchild, even if you haven't spoken in 3 years and don't expect a response. Patricia had kept it, framed it, positioned it where she'd see it every day while living in frozen isolation 200 miles from the nearest human settlement. Lily's hand found Maya's, the girl's voice coming out soft with something that might have been grief for someone she'd never met. She kept pictures of us? Yeah, baby. She did. Then why didn't she visit? Why didn't she call? The questions carried the eternal confusion of children trying to understand adult complications that made no sense from the outside. Maya sank onto the couch, pulling Lily close, searching for words that would explain Patricia Chen's choices without making them sound like rejection. Sometimes people love you, but don't know how to show in ways that feel like love. Your grandma was brilliant at understanding ice and atmosphere and climate patterns, but she wasn't good at understanding people, including herself. So she stayed here where the problems were straightforward. Collect samples, analyze data, document results. Here, she knew what to do. With family, with me, with being a mother. I think she felt lost. That's sad. Yeah, it really is. Lily wandered toward the bedroom while Maya stayed on the couch, surrounded by evidence of her mother's secret surveillance. Each photograph represented a choice, Patricia knowing about these moments but deciding not to participate, documenting from distance rather than engaging directly. Maya didn't know if that made her mother's absence better or worse. At least indifference would have been simpler than this complicated caring that looked so much like abandonment. A laptop sat on the small desk near the window, its screen dark but power light glowing. Maya opened it, expecting password protection, instead finding it unlocked and displaying a document titled, "For Maya. Read this first." Her mother's words filled the screen in the same shaky handwriting as the letter, typed this time, but still showing evidence of cognitive decline. Repeated words, odd capitalizations, thoughts that started strong and trailed into fragments. Maya, if you're reading this on my computer, you made it to Thermopolis. You're braver than I was. I spent my whole life running from things that scared me. Your father's expectations, your legitimate needs, the messy complications of being human instead of just being a scientist. I chose ice because ice doesn't judge you. Ice just exists, holding truth in crystalline structure that can be measured and analyzed and understood through systematic methodology. I was good at that. Great at it, actually. What I wasn't great at was being your mother. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I missed your childhood while cataloging frozen air from periods when humanity didn't exist. I'm sorry I chose research over relationships, data over love, certainty over comfort. I'm sorry I wasn't there when David left you, wasn't there when Lily was born, wasn't there for any of the moments that actually mattered. But I can be here now. in this inadequate way that's typical of my failures as a human being. The deep chamber samples are worth more than Marcus knows, more than Dr. Reeves suspects, more than even I fully understood until 3 months before I died. What we found in that ice isn't just anomalous climate data. It's evidence of something that shouldn't be possible, but apparently is. The combination to the sample chamber, 071511987 plus 03222017. Your birthday plus Lily's birthday. 8 digits total. No spaces or special characters. Just the 2 most important dates in my life, the days my daughter and granddaughter were born. Inside the chamber, you'll find the 23 red tag samples plus my complete analysis notes. But what you really need to see is in the back corner, in a locked cabinet marked personal research, do not remove. The code for that cabinet is your father's birthday, 102-41965. Inside that cabinet is everything Marcus and Dr. Reeves are actually fighting over. Not just the ice cores themselves, but what I extracted from them. What I synthesized. What I created using protocols that took me 15 years to develop and another 5 years to perfect. Maya. I found a way to extract and stabilize the trapped atmospheric composition without destroying the ice crystalline structure. The gas samples I recovered represent the only preserved specimens of Earth's atmosphere from 800,000 years ago that exist in analyzable form anywhere in the world. But it's not the age that makes them valuable. It's the composition. The atmosphere trapped in those cores contains molecular structures that don't naturally occur in Earth's atmosphere. Organic compounds that suggest biological processes operating at scales and complexity levels that shouldn't have existed during the Pleistocene epoch. We're talking about atmospheric chemistry that looks more like samples taken from modern industrial areas than from pristine glacial periods. Either our samples are contaminated, which I've ruled out through exhaustive verification, or 800,000 years ago, something was producing atmospheric pollutants identical to what we see from modern human industrial activity. Marcus thinks I discovered evidence that undermines anthropogenic climate change theory. That's why he's been trying to access these samples. He wants to publish findings that suggest natural processes can create the same atmospheric signatures we're attributing to human activity. Dr. Reeves thinks the same thing, which is why Meridian Energy Solutions is offering obscene amounts of money. They want data that supports climate skepticism, that gives cover to corporations resisting emissions regulations. They're both wrong. What I found isn't evidence of natural variability. It's evidence of something else entirely. Something I still don't fully understand, but that will require rewriting not just climate science, but our understanding of human evolutionary timeline. Maya, I think 800,000 years ago, there was a civilization, an advanced society that produced atmospheric signatures identical to modern industrial output that existed during a period we've always assumed was populated only by primitive hominids using stone tools. I know how insane that sounds. I've spent 3 months trying to disprove it, looking for any alternative explanation that doesn't require accepting something that contradicts everything we know about human history. I can't find one. The evidence keeps pointing to the same impossible conclusion. The synthesized atmospheric samples I extracted are worth approximately $446 million to the right buyers. Research institutions, pharmaceutical companies analyzing ancient air for novel organic compounds, governments wanting to understand historical atmospheric chemistry. But their real value is immeasurable. They're evidence that human history is longer and stranger than we've imagined. I've hidden them where Marcus will never find them. Only you can access them, using codes only you know, following instructions I've left specifically for you. Don't sell them to Meridian Energy Solutions. Don't let Marcus publish findings that distort their meaning. Don't trust anyone who claims to have your best interests at heart while simultaneously trying to profit from what I discovered. Trust yourself. You're smarter than you believe. And you're about to inherit not just wealth, but responsibility for protecting a discovery that will change how humanity understands its own past. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm trusting you to finish what I started. Mom. P.S. If Marcus tries to stop you from accessing the chamber, Show him the medical records in the file labeled Final Diagnosis. He'll understand why I excluded him from everything. Some betrayals you can forgive. Attempted murder isn't one of them. Maya read the document 3 times, her brain struggling to process impossible information while her hands shook with adrenaline and fear and something that might have been excitement. $446 million. Evidence of ancient civilization. Atmospheric samples that could rewrite human history. Her mother hadn't just left her a research facility. Patricia had left her proof of something that would change everything. Lily appeared in the bedroom doorway, holding a small wooden box carved with intricate patterns. "Mom, I found this under Grandma's bed. It has your name on it." Maya took the box, feeling its weight. Maybe 2 pounds, carefully sealed with wax and stamped with Patricia's signature. Inside, nestled in foam padding, she found a USB drive and a handwritten note on stationery that looked decades old. "Maya, this drive contains all my research data, including the protocols for atmospheric extraction and synthesis. If something happens to me, if the hard drives in the lab are destroyed or corrupted or seized, this backup ensures the work survives. Guard it carefully, Mom." And underneath, in fresher ink that suggested it had been added recently, "The cabinet combination is your father's birthday. I loved him even when I didn't know how to show it. Just like I love you. Go get what's yours." Maya stood, decision crystallizing with the kind of clarity that only comes when you stop overthinking and start trusting instinct refined through years of survival. She pocketed the USB drive, memorized the combination from her mother's document, and picked up Lily with one arm. "We're going to the sample chamber now, before Dr. Reeves or Marcus figures out what we're doing." The facility felt different in the gathering Antarctic twilight. Shadows lengthening in ways that made the corridors seem less like scientific infrastructure and more like the tunnels in adventure movies where treasure hunters face final tests before claiming their prizes. Maya moved quickly, carrying Lily through the west wing toward the section where the sample chamber security terminal waited. She didn't see Marcus or Dr. Reeves, but heard voices from the equipment room, arguing about protocols and access rights, and who had priority claim to samples neither of them legally owned. Perfect. Let them fight over theoretical access, while Maya claimed the actual prize. The sample chamber door stood sealed, its security panel glowing with patient readiness. Maya set Lily down and approached the terminal, fingers hovering over the keypad while her heart hammered against her ribs. Her birthday, plus Lily's birthday. 8 digits. No spaces. 07151987. Maya's birth, the day Patricia became a mother and apparently started learning what that meant. 03222017. Lily's arrival, the day Patricia became a grandmother and gained a second chance at family connection she'd never quite figure out how to use. Maya entered. 07151987032217. The system thought for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Then a soft chime, approval rather than rejection, and the sound of heavy bolts withdrawing from their housings. The door unsealed with a hiss of equalizing pressure, cold air rushing out from the chamber beyond. Lily grabbed Maya's hand, excitement and fear mixing in her wide eyes. Did it work? Are we in? We're in, baby. The sample chamber opened before them like a vault revealing secrets that had been waiting for exactly this moment. Fluorescent lights flickered on automatically, illuminating a space that looked more like a high-security bank vault than a scientific storage facility. Temperature displays showed readings of -80 degrees Celsius. Cold enough to preserve ice cores in pristine condition, cold enough that spending more than a few minutes inside would require specialized protective gear. But what stopped Maya cold wasn't the temperature. It was what occupied the chamber's back corner. The cabinet her mother had mentioned stood isolated from the sample racks, its surface marked with biohazard symbols and warnings in multiple languages. Personal research, do not remove, authorized personnel only, extreme value, handle with care. Maya approached it slowly, Lily pressed against her side, both of them staring at this container that apparently held $446 million worth of ancient air and implications that would rewrite human history. The cabinet's lock glowed red, waiting for a code. Your father's birthday. Maya barely remembered him. David Chun had died when she was 6, heart attack at 42 that the doctor said came from undiagnosed congenital defect. But she knew his birthday because she visited his grave every October 24th, taking flowers and telling him things about Lily that he'd never meet. She entered it. The lock turned green. The cabinet opened. Inside, secured in custom foam padding, were 23 glass vials no larger than test tubes, each one labeled with depth markers and extraction dates, each one containing what looked like nothing, clear gas invisible except where it caught light and refracted into subtle rainbow patterns. Ancient air, atmosphere from 800,000 years ago, evidence that Patricia Chen had spent 15 years developing methodology to extract, synthesize, and preserve. A tablet sat beside the vials, its screen displaying a document titled Sample Analysis Summary and Valuation. Maya opened it. Her mother's final research notes filled pages of dense technical language that Maya could barely comprehend, but certain phrases jumped out with clarity that needed no translation. Organic compound analysis reveals molecular structures consistent with industrial byproducts, polychlorinated biphenyls, chlorofluorocarbons, synthetic polymers that require advanced chemical processing to produce. Radiocarbon dating of trapped particulates suggests atmospheric contamination from sources that shouldn't exist during Pleistocene epoch. Refined metals, processed ceramics, synthetic materials that imply manufacturing capability. Isotopic signatures indicate biological activity at population scales that exceed known hunter-gatherer demographics by 3 orders of magnitude. Either our samples are contaminated or 800,000 years ago, Earth supported population densities approaching modern urban levels. Pharmaceutical compounds identified in 3 separate vial analyses. Synthetic antibiotics, analgesics, compounds that require sophisticated understanding of organic chemistry to synthesize. No natural process produces these molecules. Only deliberate pharmaceutical manufacturing. The list continued for pages, each analysis result more impossible than the last, each finding suggesting the same conclusion Patricia had reached. 800,000 years ago, something had existed that looked disturbingly like modern industrial civilization. And at the bottom of the document, a valuation assessment. Conservative market value for synthesized atmospheric samples, $446 million US. Research institutions, $200 million for complete atmospheric composition analysis from previously inaccessible period. Pharmaceutical companies, $180 million for novel organic compounds with potential medical applications. Government agencies, $66 million for historical atmospheric data relevant to climate modeling. Total estimated value assumes competitive bidding and proper authentication. Note, actual scientific value is immeasurable. These samples may represent only preserved evidence of prehistoric advanced civilization. Maya's hands shook holding the tablet. $446 million. In 23 glass vials containing air that shouldn't exist. Mom. Lily's voice came out small, uncertain. What does it mean? What did Grandma find? Before Maya could answer, footsteps echoed from the corridor. Multiple people moving fast. Marcus's voice carried across the distance with urgency that suggested he'd just realized what Maya had done. She's accessing the chamber. Evelyn, she's actually accessing it. Maya moved on instinct, closing the cabinet and spinning the lock back to secure position. The vials stayed hidden while she faced the doorway, just as Marcus and Dr. Reeves appeared, both breathing hard from running through corridors not designed for speed. Marcus's face cycled through emotions too quickly to track. Surprise, calculation, fury, grudging respect. You knew the code all along. Patricia told you in that letter. My mother left me instructions for accessing my inheritance. Yes. Dr. Reeves pushed past Marcus, her sharp eyes taking in the chamber's interior with predatory assessment. What have you found? Show me. Why would I show you anything? You're not the legal owner of this facility or its contents. Because I'm offering you $50 million in legal protection, and if you refuse my offer, I'll make sure you face criminal charges for violating Antarctic research regulations, international property disputes, and half a dozen other violations my attorneys will manufacture if necessary. Dr. Reeves's professional veneer had cracked completely, revealing the ruthless corporate operative beneath. You're not equipped to fight Meridian Energy Solutions, Ms. Chen. We have resources, connections, and willingness to do whatever it takes to acquire what we want. Either you sell to us, or we take it through legal mechanisms that will leave you with nothing but debt and regret. Marcus stepped forward, positioning himself between Dr. Reeves and Maya in what might have been protective gesture or just strategic repositioning. Don't threaten her, Evelyn. That's not how this works. This works however I decide it works. Your opinion stopped matching the moment you failed to deliver samples you promised. Dr. Reeves turned her fury on Marcus with visible satisfaction. Did you really think Meridian funded your research out of altruistic interest in climate science? We paid you to gain access to Patricia's work, to position yourself as her partner, so you could claim co-ownership of anything she discovered. You spent 4 months trying to open this chamber and failed completely. Your usefulness has expired. The revelation hit Marcus like physics he hadn't anticipated. You've been using me. Of course we've been using you. You're a brilliant researcher with flexible ethics and substantial debt. That makes you perfect for situations requiring someone willing to blur legal boundaries for financial compensation. Dr. Reeves pulled out her phone, typing rapidly. I'm calling my extraction team. They're staged at McMurdo, waiting for my signal. They'll be here in 2 hours with proper equipment and legal authorization, forged but convincing, to seize these samples pending resolution of the estate dispute. Maya's mind raced through options. 2 hours before corporate mercenaries arrived with fake legal papers and real intention to steal everything her mother had died protecting. The facility was isolated, help was 200 miles away, and Dr. Reeves clearly had resources that made resistance feel futile. But futile wasn't the same as impossible. Maya had spent 18 months learning that lesson while keeping herself and Lily together despite systems designed to separate them, despite poverty that should have broken them, despite every reasonable voice saying she should just give up and accept whatever minimal help society offered. She'd ignored those voices. She'd fought. She'd survived. And now she had $446 million worth of ancient air to protect from people who distort its meaning for profit. Lily, baby, I need you to go back to Grandma's quarters. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me. Maya kept her voice calm despite the adrenaline flooding her system. Remember the emergency number I made you memorize? The one for Lawyer James? Lily nodded, understanding flashing in her eyes despite being 8 years old and terrified. She ran before Dr. Reeves could intercept her, small feet pounding on corridor floors that carried the sound into fading distance. Dr. Reeves moved to follow. Marcus blocked her path. Let me through, Dr. Verne. No. The single word carried weight that made Dr. Reeves reassess her opponent. Marcus stood his ground despite looking like he'd just watched his entire understanding of the situation collapse. You used me, paid me to betray Patricia's trust, to steal her research, to position myself as her partner so Meridian could claim co-ownership through me. That makes me complicit in fraud. That makes me an accessory to theft. That makes you an employee who did what he was hired to do. Step aside, or I'll add assault charges to the list of legal problems you're about to face. Dr. Reeves tried to push past. Marcus caught her arm, his grip gentle but immovable. Patricia was right. About everything. The paranoia I dismissed as dementia, that was her recognizing what I was too blind or too corrupt to see. You've been orchestrating this entire situation, using me to get access, probably paying whoever filed the estate dispute that delayed probate. Marcus's voice dropped to something that might have been grief or might have been fury. Did you kill her? Did Meridian decide Patricia was too much obstacle and arrange an accident that looked natural? Dr. Reeves's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Calculation rather than surprise, assessment rather than denial. Dr. Chen died of natural causes verified by coroner's examination. Any suggestion otherwise is slander that my attorneys will address through civil litigation. That's not a denial. That's a statement of documented fact. Whether you choose to accept it or invent conspiracy theories is your decision. Now, let me through before this becomes physical confrontation. Maya used their standoff to move deeper into the sample chamber, positioning herself between them and the cabinet containing vials worth more than any of them could properly comprehend. Her phone showed no signal. The facility's communications ran through satellite uplinks that Dr. Reeves probably controlled. She couldn't call James Whitmore, couldn't request help, couldn't do anything except protect these samples with her body and hope that Marcus's sudden attack of conscience was genuine rather than performative. Dr. Verne, Maya said carefully, "Did you try to kill my mother?" Marcus released Dr. Reeves and turned to face Maya. His expression carried exhaustion and something that looked like shame. "Patricia and I fought 3 days before she died. She discovered the Meridian connection, confronted me about accepting payment to spy on her research. I denied it. Badly. She knew I was lying. She told me I destroyed 15 years of partnership for corporate money and that she was removing me from all future research, revoking my access, excluding me from her estate." He moved to one of the sample racks, fingers tracing ice core containers with the careful attention of someone saying goodbye to work that had defined his life. I was angry. Furious, actually. I devoted my career to this research, and she was erasing me like I'd never mattered. So I told her she excluded me. I'd publish everything we discovered, share the findings with whoever would pay the most, destroy her reputation for caution and careful verification by releasing preliminary data that would make her look either incompetent or like she'd been hiding revolutionary discoveries out of cowardice. His voice cracked, and she looked at me with these eyes that were disappointed but not surprised, like she'd always known I'd disappoint her eventually. And she said, "Marcus, I expected better from you. I thought you actually cared about the truth more than recognition. I was wrong." Then she had the heart attack, right there in the laboratory. Collapsed while reaching for her phone to call for help. Silence filled the chamber, broken only by the hum of refrigeration units maintaining impossible cold. Maya processed this confession, trying to determine if Marcus was admitting to causing her mother's death through stress or claiming innocence despite contributing to the circumstances. "Did you help her?" The question came out flat, accusatory. When she collapsed, "Did you call for help or did you watch her die?" I called immediately, used the emergency sat phone to contact McMurdo Medical, but we're 200 miles from help. By the time they could mount a rescue operation, Marcus's hands clenched into fists. She died before transport could arrive. The medics said there was nothing anyone could have done, that her arrhythmia was undiagnosed and untreatable once the cascade started. They said even if we'd been in a hospital, her survival odds were minimal. But you blamed yourself. I blame myself for the fight that triggered it, for betraying her trust, for choosing Meridian's money over our partnership, for being exactly the kind of scientist she'd warned me not to become, someone who values recognition and profit more than integrity and truth. Marcus met Maya's eyes. "Your mother was right to exclude me. I didn't deserve to inherit her work. I'm not worthy of the discoveries she made." Dr. Reeves's laugh cut through Marcus's confession with surgical precision. How touching. The corrupt scientist discovers his conscience too late to matter. "Dr. Verne, your self-flagellation is irrelevant. What matters is that Meridian has invested substantial resources in acquiring Patricia Chen's research, and we will acquire it whether you assist or obstruct. Maya Chen will either accept our compensation or face legal consequences. Those are the options." Maya looked at this woman who'd orchestrated theft with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done it before and would do it again. She thought about her mother choosing truth over convenience, choosing careful verification over rushing to publish, choosing integrity over recognition that would have come easier with compromise. She thought about Mrs. Kowalski's funeral money and wedding rings in pawn shops and 8-year-olds who deserved better than watching their mothers surrender to people who used money and lawyers like weapons against anyone without equal resources. And she thought about $446 million worth of ancient air sitting in a locked cabinet behind her, evidence of something impossible that her mother had died protecting. "No," Maya said. The word came out steady, certain, final. Dr. Reeves's expression hardened. "Excuse me. No, I'm not selling to Meridian. I'm not giving you access to these samples. I'm not letting you distort my mother's discovery for corporate profit." Maya pulled out her phone despite the lack of signal, held it up like a weapon. "Before we came here, I sent copies of my mother's research, all of it, to her attorney, to 3 major research universities, and to journalists who specialize in science coverage. If anything happens to me, if I don't contact them within 48 hours, they'll publish everything. The samples, the analysis, the evidence that you've been trying to steal this research for months." Lie. Complete lie. Maya hadn't sent anything to anyone because she hadn't known what her mother had discovered until 15 minutes ago. But Dr. Reeves didn't know that, couldn't verify it, had to weigh the risk that Maya was telling the truth against the certainty that public exposure would destroy Meridian's plans. Marcus picked up Maya's bluff with surprising speed. "I can verify the research data. I have access to Patricia's preliminary findings, know her methodology, can authenticate that the samples are genuine and revolutionary. If Maya releases that information, the scientific community will be demanding access before Meridian can manufacture legal claims." Dr. Reeves's phone rang. She answered it with clipped efficiency, listened for 30 seconds, then her face went carefully neutral. "I understand." "Yes." "Confirmed. Adjusting strategy now." She ended the call and studied Maya with reassessment that suggested the power dynamic had shifted in ways neither of them had anticipated. "It seems you were more prepared than I credited. My team at McMurdo reports that federal authorities have been notified of a potential theft in progress at Thermopolis Research Station. They're delaying our extraction team with regulatory questions that will take hours to resolve." Maya's pulse jumped. Lily had actually reached James Whitmore, somehow gotten signal or used the facility's emergency communications, contacted the attorney, and triggered whatever legal protections he'd prepared for exactly this scenario. 8-year-old Lily had saved them. "So your mercenaries can't get here in time to steal what you want," Maya said. "Which means you're trespassing in my facility with zero legal authority and increasing criminal liability every minute you stay. I suggest you leave. Now." Dr. Reeves didn't move. Meridian Energy Solutions has invested $4.2 million in acquiring Patricia Chen's research. We don't walk away from that kind of investment over temporary setbacks. You've won this round, Ms. Chen. Congratulations. But this isn't over. We'll file estate disputes, challenge your ownership, tie you up in legal proceedings that will drain whatever resources you think you have. Eventually, you'll settle. Everyone settles. Or I'll win. Because my mother left me everything I need to prove ownership, authenticity, and that you've been attempting theft through fraudulent means, including Marcus's testimony about your conspiracy. Maya glanced at Marcus. "You're going to testify, right? About Meridian paying you to spy on my mother's research." Marcus nodded slowly, decision crystallizing across his weathered features. "Yes, I'll testify to everything. The payments, the pressure to share Patricia's data, the instructions to position myself as her partner so Meridian could claim co-ownership through me. All of it." Dr. Reeves's professional composure finally cracked completely. "You'll never work in research again, Dr. Verne. I'll make sure of it. Meridian has connections throughout the scientific community. We fund half the climate research programs in the Western Hemisphere. One word from us and you're blacklisted permanently." "Good," Marcus said, and something in his voice suggested he'd just made peace with consequences he'd been avoiding. "I don't deserve to work in research after what I've done. Patricia trusted me, and I betrayed that trust for money and recognition. Maybe permanent exile from the scientific community is appropriate punishment." He turned to Maya. "I can't undo the damage I've caused, but I can help you protect what your mother discovered. I know her methodology, understand the implications of her findings, can serve as expert witness to verify authenticity if buyers question the sample's provenance. It's not redemption, but it's something. Maya studied him. This man who'd contributed to her mother's death, who'd conspired to steal research, who represented everything Patricia had warned against, but also someone who'd apparently found his conscience somewhere between corporate corruption and this moment where he had to choose sides with consequences. You'll testify against Meridian. You'll provide expert analysis of mom's samples without trying to claim credit or co-ownership. You'll help me find ethical buyers who will use this research to understand history rather than distort it for profit. Maya's voice carried the same careful certainty her mother must have used when defining research parameters. And you'll accept that you're not a partner. You're a consultant I'm paying for your expertise because it's useful, not because you deserve recognition. Marcus absorbed the terms without argument. Agreed. Dr. Reeves moved toward the chamber exit, her retreat carrying the organized precision of someone already planning their next attack. Enjoy your temporary victory, Ms. Chen. Meridian doesn't lose. We just adjust timelines. When you're ready to sell, and you will be, after 6 months of legal bills and isolation and realizing that $446 million is meaningless if you can't access it, we'll still be interested in acquiring your mother's samples, though the price will be significantly lower once you've been fighting us for half a year. She left, her footsteps echoing into distance that felt more like postponement than actual departure. Marcus and Maya stood in the sample chamber's artificial cold, surrounded by ice cores representing 800,000 years of frozen time, protecting vials that contained evidence of something that shouldn't exist. She's right, Marcus said quietly, about the legal battles. Meridian will make this extraordinarily difficult. They have resources you can't match, connections you can't leverage, willingness to play dirty in ways that will drain your finances and your spirit simultaneously. Then I'll fight dirty too, Maya said. I kept myself and Lily together through 18 months of divorce proceedings, custody battles, poverty, and a system designed to separate us. I'm not afraid of corporate lawyers or wealthy opponents or people who think money makes them invincible. Marcus's expression shifted to something like respect. Patricia will be proud of you. She always said the most dangerous opponents were the ones who had nothing to lose and everything to protect. That was her describing herself, but it applies to you too. Did she suffer? At the end, the question hung between them, personal in ways that violated the careful boundaries they'd maintained. Marcus considered it with the careful attention of someone who understood that some truths required precision. Yes and no. The heart attack was catastrophic. Massive cardiac arrest that would have been fatal regardless of medical intervention. But it happened fast. She was conscious for maybe 30 seconds, just long enough to understand what was happening. The last thing she said was, "Tell Maya I'm sorry." Then she was gone. Maya's vision blurred with tears she'd been holding since reading her mother's letter, since seeing the wall of photographs documenting surveillance disguised as love, since understanding that Patricia had cared in all the wrong ways until finally getting it right at the very end. I need to get Lily. Make sure she's safe. Then we need to figure out what to do with $446 million worth of ancient air that proves impossible things about human history. They found Lily in Patricia's quarters, curled on the couch with James Whitmore on speakerphone. The attorney's voice carried across the distance with calm authority that suggested he'd handled crises before and would handle this one too. "Ms. Chen, I'm pleased to hear you're safe. Your daughter reached me through the facility's emergency uplink and explained the situation with admirable clarity for an 8-year-old. I've contacted federal authorities, filed emergency injunctions, and arranged for your transport off the ice within 6 hours. There's a supply flight from McMurdo that was scheduled for tomorrow, but I've persuaded them to move it up. Weather window is closing soon. If you don't leave tonight, you could be stuck there for weeks." Maya pulled Lily close, feeling her daughter's warmth against the cold that seemed to permeate everything in this place. "What about the samples? I can't leave $446 million worth of research sitting here where Meridian can come back and take it. The samples come with you. I'm arranging secure storage at a facility in New Zealand where they can be properly preserved while we establish your legal ownership and begin the authentication process. But Maya, you need to understand what you're inheriting. That level of wealth comes with responsibilities, dangers, and complications that will define your life for years to come. I understand. I'm not sure you do, but you'll learn. Patricia chose you for a reason. She believed you were strong enough, smart enough, and stubborn enough to protect what she discovered. Let's prove her right. The next 6 hours blurred into organized chaos. Marcus helped Maya document the samples, photograph the cabinet contents, prepare the vials for transport using protocols that would preserve their integrity. He worked with the careful attention of someone trying to earn redemption through competence. And Maya led him because she needed expertise she didn't possess, and he seemed genuinely committed to helping. Lily packed their minimal belongings, carefully including the USB drive and Patricia's letter, making sure nothing important was left behind. She moved through her grandmother's quarters. With the reverent attention children bring to spaces belonging to people they'll never meet but somehow understand. The transport helicopter arrived at 11 p.m. Sarah at the controls again, her weathered face showing relief when she saw them waiting. Heard you had some trouble with corporate types. Figured you could use a friendly extraction. They loaded the samples carefully, the vials secured in specialized containers that Marcus provided. Each one represented impossible value. Not just monetary but scientific, historical, revolutionary. Evidence that human history was longer and stranger than anyone had imagined. As the helicopter lifted off, Maya watched Thermopolis Research Station shrink into the Antarctic landscape. This facility her mother had built, where Patricia had spent 280 days per year for 15 years, where she'd made discoveries that would change everything. Lily pressed against the window, watching ice and rock scroll past beneath them. Will we come back? Someday, Maya said. When we're ready. When we've figured out what to do with what Grandma left us. When we've honored her legacy properly. What if we can't? What if it's too hard? Maya thought about Mrs. Kowalski's funeral money and wedding rings in pawn shops, about eviction notices and medical bills and 18 months of barely surviving, about her mother choosing truth over convenience, integrity over recognition, careful verification over rushing to claim credit. Then we'll fail trying, which is better than not trying at all. The flight to McMurdo took 90 minutes. From there, a military transport to Christchurch, New Zealand, where James Whitmore waited with legal documents and secure storage arrangements and a team of experts who'd begin the authentication process that would confirm what Maya already knew. Her mother's samples were real, revolutionary, and worth exactly what Patricia had estimated. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in a laboratory at the University of Auckland watching scientists examine the vials with reverent attention. Dr. Sarah Kim, the lead researcher on the authentication team, approached with results that would determine everything. Ms. Chen, I've completed preliminary analysis of 3 sample vials. The atmospheric composition matches your mother's documentation exactly. We're seeing organic compounds that shouldn't exist in 800,000-year-old ice, isotopic signatures that suggest industrial activity, molecular structures that imply advanced chemical synthesis. Dr. Kim's voice carried the trembling excitement of someone confronting impossible data. Either these samples are contaminated, which our testing rules out, or they're evidence of something that will rewrite human prehistory. What's your professional opinion? My professional opinion is that your mother discovered something extraordinary. Whether it proves ancient advanced civilization or reveals some natural process we don't understand yet, these samples represent the single most significant atmospheric analysis in modern history. Dr. Kim paused, and they're worth every penny of the $446 million valuation. We've already fielded inquiries from 17 research institutions, 8 pharmaceutical companies, and 3 government agencies wanting to purchase access. With proper competitive bidding, you could exceed that estimate substantially. Maya looked at Lily, at her daughter's face showing hope and exhaustion and the beginning of understanding that their lives had changed in ways neither could fully comprehend. She thought about Mrs. Kowalski waiting in Boston for repayment plus interest. About James Whitmore's legal bills that were accumulating faster than Maya could track. About the future that suddenly looked possible rather than just survivable. Start the bidding process, but include contract terms requiring ethical use. No climate denial organizations. No buyers will distort findings for political purposes. No one who isn't committed to honest scientific analysis regardless of what the data reveals. Dr. Kim nodded. Your mother would approve. She was uncompromising about research integrity. Now I understand why. The auction took 8 weeks. When it concluded, Maya had sold access rights to the samples for $512 million. Substantially more than Patricia's estimate because pharmaceutical companies had identified organic compounds with potential medical applications worth pursuing. The University of Auckland got primary research access for publishing Patricia's findings. 3 major climate research institutions received secondary access for verification studies, and Maya retained ownership of the physical samples, ensuring they couldn't be destroyed or hidden if results proved inconvenient for powerful interests. James Whitmore handled the financial complexity with the calm efficiency of someone who'd managed complicated estates before. After taxes, legal fees, and properly compensating everyone who'd helped, Maya had approximately $380 million. She paid Mrs. Kowalski $6,600, $6,000 principal plus $600 interest, exactly as their agreement specified. The elderly woman accepted it with tears in her eyes and immediately tried to give Maya the $600 interest back as gift for beautiful Lily because old ladies are allowed to spoil children. She paid Marcus Verne $2 million as a consulting fee, enough to clear his debts and fund independent research for years, but not enough to suggest forgiveness for his betrayal. He accepted it with the quiet gratitude of someone who'd expected nothing and received more than he deserved. She established a trust fund for Lily, $50 million that her daughter couldn't access until age 25, but that would ensure she never faced the kind of desperate poverty that had defined Maya's life since David's departure. She donated $30 million to climate research organizations her mother had supported, ensuring Patricia's legacy extended beyond just the samples themselves. She bought a house in Boston. Nothing extravagant, just a comfortable 4-bedroom where Lily could have her own room and Maya could breathe without calculating how many dollars remained until the next crisis. And she established the Patricia Chen Foundation for Scientific Integrity, $100 million endowment to support researchers who prioritize truth over profit, who valued careful verification over rushing to publish, who understood that some discoveries were too important to be corrupted by corporate interests or political agendas. Marcus served as the foundation's first director, his redemption arc complete through work rather than just words. He published Patricia's findings under her name alone, giving her posthumous credit for discoveries that were already reshaping scientific understanding of human prehistory. Dr. Reeves and Meridian Energy Solutions filed 3 separate lawsuits challenging the sample sales, claiming fraud and breach of implied contract. All 3 were dismissed with prejudice, and Meridian eventually paid a $12 million settlement to avoid criminal charges for attempted theft and corporate espionage. 6 months after leaving Antarctica, Maya received a package from the estate attorney. Inside, one final letter from Patricia Chen, this one dated a week before her death. Maya, if you're reading this, you succeeded. You claimed your inheritance, protected the samples, and probably fought off corporate vultures and betrayers along the way. I knew you could do it. You're stronger than you realize. I spent my life measuring frozen time, analyzing atmospheric chemistry, documenting evidence of how Earth's climate has changed over millennia. I was good at that. Great at it, actually. What I wasn't great at was understanding that the most important measurement wasn't temperature or gas composition or isotopic ratios. It was time spent with people who mattered. Years I should have invested in you instead of ice cores. Moments I missed that can never be recovered. I'm sorry I failed you as a mother. I'm sorry I chose science over family until it was too late to build the relationship we both deserved. I'm sorry you had to learn strength and resilience and determination through hardship instead of security. But I'm not sorry I left you this inheritance. Not just the money, though I hope it gives you and Lily the stability you deserve, but the responsibility of protecting something extraordinary. You're the guardian of evidence that will change how humanity understands its own history. That's a burden and a privilege, and I trust you to handle both. Live well, Maya. Be the mother to Lily that I couldn't be to you. And when you look at those vials of impossible air, remember that sometimes the most important discoveries aren't about what we find in ancient ice. They're about what we find in ourselves when we're brave enough to keep fighting for what matters. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm grateful you were my daughter, even if I was too foolish to show it properly while I was alive. Mom. Maya read it to Lily that night in their new house. Both of them curled together in the warmth of home that couldn't be taken away by eviction notices or caseworkers or people who thought money made them powerful. Outside, Boston traffic hummed with the sound of ordinary life. Inside, Maya and her daughter held each other while snow began to fall. Not Antarctic ice spanning millennia, but simple frozen water that would melt with spring, temporary and precious and enough. Do you think Grandma knew? Lily asked softly. That we'd be okay? Maya thought about thermometers reading 0, about ice that shouldn't exist, about mothers who measured frozen time while missing their daughters' lives. She thought about impossible inheritances and billion-dollar atmospheric samples and legacies built from mistakes and redemption. Yeah, baby. I think she knew. I think she understood that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is trust someone else to finish what you started. They sat together in comfortable silence while snow fell and the radiator clanked in their house. Their actual house that no one could take away settled around them like a promise finally kept. The thermometers all read normal now. Not 0, not broken, not measuring impossible temperatures that suggested reality was stranger than anyone imagined. Just normal. Just home. Just enough. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.